early years, the story before Canal. In May 1920, William R. Timmons married Eva McDonald, through whom the legacy of 5 generations began. His entrepreneurial spirit and dedication to establishing Greenville as a big city was evident when he became CEO of the Chamber of Commerce.
Granddad was part of the Chamber's 1924 acquaintance tours. Greenville businessmen would get on the train, actually, and go to cities in the Northeast and even Canada and tout how great Greenville was, and they tried to attract businesses to come to Greenville. He also led the fundraising efforts to build the Greenville Chamber of Commerce building that was completed in 1925. Today it's a prominent landmark in the city of Greenville.
About that time, he began a real estate and insurance agency named Central Agencies that later became Central Realty Corporation and the William R. Timmons Agency. (1939), a future for long-haul trucking insurance. As the Depression was ending and World War II was starting, the remnants of the Depression left the Southeast the poorest of the poor and made truckers the riverboat gamblers of the transportation industry. South Carolina, followed by North Carolina and Georgia, passed legislation demanding long-haul vehicles be properly insured.
If you think back in the 30s, there was no interstate system and the roads weren't very safe condition, and the equipment, the trucks, weren't really what they are today. And it was a pretty risky business, but the demand for trucks, for them to move goods to market, was ever increasing. And he saw an opportunity that he could solve the insurance needs for these truckers. He could create a special niche for his agency.
1940s, opportunity. By 1942, the William R. Timmons Agency was writing more insurance on truckers and commercial passenger vehicles than any other agency in the 3 states. However, insurers were struggling. 4 companies collapsed in an 8-year period, resulting in higher rates and wider restrictions. Timmons and his manager, T.J. Mims, diligently looked for danger signs and transferred clients to new carriers when existing ones collapsed. In the end, not one client went without coverage or paid extra premiums. Their discipline paid off and became a cornerstone of the Canal culture that persists to this day. The First National Bank of Columbia incorporated Canal Insurance Company to insure autos financed by the bank. Then in December 1942, capitalizing on an opportunity to create a stable truck insurer, Timmons acquired the 3-year-old carrier for $17,500. In 1945, Gordon Rogers was added to the management team, playing a significant role in developing a coast-to-coast network of independent agencies. Then in 1948, the business suffered a tragic loss when Timmons died in an automobile accident.
Generation above me, rallied around. My dad was a senior at Furman. He's a retired Army captain back from the war, and he left Furman early and came and served as secretary. He managed the investments and ran the real estate company. Later, maybe 1949, Uncle Charlie, who had graduated from Clemson but was working at Westinghouse up in Pittsburgh, he left Westinghouse and came back to Canal and served as the controller and treasurer.
No one could have imagined that this management team, comprised of 2 second-generation shareholders and Mims and Rogers, would lead the company for nearly 50 years into the late 90s. None ever retired from the company. Such stability and commitment is totally unique in the insurance industry and certainly a key element in Canal's phenomenal success. 1950s and 1960s, perseverance and building for the future. In 1953, business was starting to expand and Canal was becoming a true regional specialty carrier, acquiring licenses to do business in 9 southeastern states. In 1956, President Eisenhower signed a bill for the completion of an interstate highway system. Although it would take 35 years to complete, the road ahead for truckers and Canal was being paved.
So the contract that my dad got from Bill Timmons in 1957, early 57, was actually in his personal name, and I think it was 2 pages. Canal Insurance Company is the only insurance company that has been through it thick and thin over and over.
By 1958, the company was licensed in 27 states and the District of Columbia. In 1960, Canal was operating in 42 states, and the AM Best Company gave Canal an excellent rating for growth, sponsorship, and investments. 1970s and 1980s, discipline and preparedness begin to pay big dividends. The economic climate of this entire period was exceptionally turbulent, presenting considerable challenges to the transportation marketplace.
There were difficult times, but there's always difficult times. And I think when I look back at that era, and you're talking about the rise in gas prices, which obviously affected the truckers to a large degree, the high interest rates that people had to contend with, it was certainly an obstacle. But as far as the canal was concerned, Canal always seemed to have a vision that was focused.
In the midst of this turmoil, the highly disciplined management team that by this point had been together for well over 30 years seized the opportunity. Premiums tripled from 1969 to 1978. Then, following several flat years, quadrupled by the end of the 80s. This laid the foundation for 2 decades of continuous underwriting profits from 1985 to 2006, a feat unsurpassed in the insurance industry.
Well, I came with Rollins in 1985, and at that time the industry was changing quite a bit. There was a capacity shortage, the standard markets were unwilling to write business, and that's created quite a bit of opportunity for Canal and for Rollins.
Canal had become the gold standard in the trucking insurance business. AM Best agreed, as Canal maintained an excellent rating throughout the period. In 1989, Canal was 50 years old. 40 years of patient, disciplined, and committed leadership was paying off. 1990s, a new millennium approaches. As the millennium approached its close, the company navigated yet another tumultuous period. This time, the challenges were both internal and external. 3/4 of the management team that led Canal for nearly 50 years passed away while still on the job. The torch was passed to a completely new management team when Charles Timmons Jr. was elected president in 1998. Trucking insurance was an extremely difficult business to underwrite, as Department of Transportation regulations and a company's ability to monitor insureds were still more of an art than a science. Only true specialists wrote trucking business, especially in the small owner-operator segment where Canal had made its name. 21st century, great opportunity, unprecedented challenge, recommitment. Canal brought its distinctive business model, tested over 50 years, into the new century. A key element of that model was to take full advantage of competitor withdrawals from the transportation market. 1999 to 2004 was such a period during which premiums tripled to a stunning $530 million. Years of steady, disciplined, and at times highly opportunistic management positioned Canal with the wherewithal to capitalize on a tight insurance market for truckers, particularly as the early decade economic boom led to dramatic expansion of the small owner-operator segment. During this remarkable growth spurt, the world around Canal was fundamentally changing. The commercial auto insurance industry began to embrace new technologies and sophisticated underwriting and pricing models. What had been an art practiced by a small number of specialty insurers was rapidly becoming a science. Canal began to invest in a new, technology-enabled business model, but events were moving with unprecedented speed. The transportation industry itself was being transformed by government regulation and public access to safety information. In the present day, history is repeating itself. Although the transportation market is highly competitive, many companies are withdrawing or collapsing. 75 years of business discipline and customer commitment make Canal one of very few companies agents expect to weather this storm and continue serving the motor carrier industry for many years. The leadership and shareholders will continue to navigate the risks of the road in the spirit of William R. Timmons' commitment and legacy, both now and into the future.